There's some pretty weird facts out there. I mean, I bet you didn't know Sweden has a brain library because apparently they're not a fan of books. Or how Japanese employers don't fire their staff, they send them to the boredom room. Trust me, it's not a place you want to be. And there's plenty more, so here are 20 random facts that I bet you didn't see coming. In the 15th century, a rooster was put on trial and burned at the stake all because it laid an egg. And yes, I know, roosters don't normally lay eggs. Scientists suspect this one had a condition where it was both part male and female. But back then, they were a bit ignorant on the biological sciences front. A rooster laying an egg was seen as a sign of witchcraft. Locals believed the egg could hatch a basilisk, a mythical serpent-like creature so deadly it kills with a single glance. And it wasn't just roosters, animal trials were surprisingly common. There were rats charged with theft and pigs with assault, all found guilty because of some crazy medieval superstition. Speeding tickets are never good, and Walter Arnold found out the hard way when in 1896 he was the first person ever to receive one. And he wasn't just over the limit, he quadrupled it. Yeah, Walter was hooning at the brisk pace of 8 miles an hour in a 2-mile zone. And it gets better, he was chased down by a policeman on a bicycle who not only booked him for speeding, but also fined him for not having a man walk in front of the car waving a red flag. They call these guys red flag bearers, and yes, that was literally a law back then. Have you ever dreamed of being an Olympian? It's really not as hard as you may think. In 2018, Elizabeth Swaney made it to the upper echelons as an Olympic freestyle skier, not by pulling crazy tricks in the halfpipe, but by simply skiing down the pipe slowly without falling. To qualify, athletes had to place in the top 30 in at least 2 international events, so she'd enter events with only 15 to 20 competitors, and provided she stayed upright, she was in. And Swaney's strategy only worked because she didn't represent the USA, the country where she was born and raised. She instead took advantage of her Hungarian ancestry to compete. She eventually made it to the 2018 Winter Olympics in South Korea and became Hungary's first ever Olympic freestyle skier. Well, here's something you can't unsee. And no, it's not Arnold Schwarzenegger's cat. It's a real genetic condition that turns animals into giant balls of muscle. The condition's called myostatin-related hypertrophy. Myostatin is essentially the body's natural off switch for muscle growth. And without it, they just keep on growing. A mutation in the gene switches off myostatin production and can lead to some pretty crazy results, like this, or this. But before you decide to tear up that gym membership and invest in some gene inhibitors, just be warned. They're not legal and could very well be deadly. Japan's labor laws make firing workers incredibly difficult, so much so that even a well-documented dismissal can quite quickly escalate into a legal nightmare. So companies got creative. They invented a new type of employee exit strategy called the Banishment or Boredom room. Instead of firing someone, they move them to a different role to complete repetitive, soul-crushing tasks, like staring at blank computer screens or reorganizing files. Eventually, the psychological toll sets in and the employee resigns voluntarily. You don't actually have to drink 8 glasses of water a day. It's all a lie. The 8 glasses of water a day rule traces back to a 1945 US Food and Nutrition Board recommendation where they said in most instances, a suitable allowance of water for adults is 2.5 litres, around 8 glasses daily. But people just ignored the next sentence, which went on to say that most of this is already contained in prepared food. That's right, I mean, cucumbers and apples are over 85% water. Throw in the tea and coffee and you're halfway there. It's important to drink some water, but don't believe them if they tell you you need to drink 8 glasses straight. In the 1800s, skilled craftsmen who could shape and fit axe handles, also known as helve makers, were in pretty short supply. This often meant axes were dangerously unreliable. The loose heads would fly off mid-swing and cause serious injuries or even death. Why do you care? Well, you're probably familiar with the phrase associated with these wayward axe heads, to fly off the handle. These days, it's used to describe someone suddenly losing their temper, but back then it was the brief few seconds between someone swinging an axe and it ending up stuck in the guy behind him. And so we move on to a chicken that defied all odds. In 1945, a chicken named Mike lived for 18 months after losing his head. Well, he didn't quite lose it completely. The beheading attempt went wrong, and part of his brainstem remained intact. He could walk, albeit a bit wonky, balance on a perch, and even kept trying to peck at the ground with his neck stump. Mike's esophagus and windpipe were completely exposed. To keep him alive, they fed him liquid food through an eyedropper. But inevitably, some of that food accidentally found its way into his lungs. Mike didn't die from a missing head. He ended up suffocating, but not before he became a national sensation, famously known as Mike the Headless Chicken. Thomas Wedders, an 18th century English circus performer, became famous on the freak show circuit, all thanks to his enormous protruding nose. At a whopping 8 inches long, Thomas is thought to have suffered from rhinophyma, a rare skin condition that causes the nose to become excessively enlarged, bulbous, and deformed. Circus freak shows at the time were booming, and Thomas was the star attraction. They promoted him as having the longest nose in the world, a record Guinness still recognizes to this day. So I'm not entirely sure how this is legal, but in Switzerland, you can hire a clown to stalk someone for an entire week. The clown trails the victim, sends them creepy messages like "I'm watching you" or "You don't know me, but I know you," and just generally does whatever they can to creep the person out. And to top it all off, on the 7th day, when the victim least expects it, the clown appears from nowhere and smashes a pie right in their face. As for the cost, it'll set you back about $1,000. Not all that expensive for a week-long psychological scare campaign. The deadliest animal in the world is probably more unassuming than you may think. It's not the lion or the snake, no, it's the mosquito. This tiny insect kills over 700,000 people annually by spreading bloodborne diseases like malaria and yellow fever. And it's only the female mosquitoes you need to watch out for, because they're the ones that bite. They siphon off the proteins in human blood to help their eggs grow and hatch. Yeah, we've all seen one of those boring old book libraries where the only thing you really learn is how confusing the Dewey Decimal System is. But Sweden, they've really upped their library game with a library consisting exclusively of human brains. The Karolinska Brain Bank holds more than 5,000 real human brains. Why? Well, to study mental diseases like Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and depression. The brains are preserved right after death, usually within hours, to make sure the delicate proteins, cells, and genetic material remain intact. Wimbledon takes tennis balls seriously, and with over 55,000 used throughout the tournament, you'd want to. Even before a ball touches the court, it has to pass the bounce test. If it doesn't reach a specific height after being dropped from 100 inches, that's a fail. And it gets a bit crazier. Beneath Wimbledon's pristine courts lies a secret underground bunker. It's climate controlled and packed with tennis balls to ensure each one is stored at an optimal 20 degrees Celsius. So there's frog legs in France, century eggs in China, and both rank pretty high on the list of menu items I plan to avoid at all costs. But now there's another contender, Godzilla Ramen. The viral Taiwanese dish features an entire crocodile leg, claws and all, sticking right out of a steaming bowl of noodles and broth. And while I don't know how much a crocodile leg normally costs, the price seems pretty reasonable. For only $50, you can tuck into what diners claim is a surprisingly accurate fusion of both chicken and fish. These days, there's a QR code for everything, and digital mourning, also known as smart graves, is no exception. The practice is part of a movement referred to as digital memorialization. QR codes are often etched into concrete headstones and when scanned, directs the visitor to a personalized webpage or video tribute about the deceased person's life. And it's not just QR codes, the high-tech cemetery trend is booming. There's memorial holograms, AI that can simulate the deceased's voice, and even digital VR cemeteries for families to visit and pay their respects. The internet is filled with people who make ridiculous claims that just can't be true. So when a Korean man going by the handle Tent Guy claimed he could pitch a 24-person military tent by himself in under 2 hours, he was met with instant skepticism. Largely because these tents are heavy. Poles need to be aligned precisely, and they're usually set up by an entire team, not just one guy. So I guess the only thing he could do in this situation was prove it, and he did. 2,000 people gathered to watch Tent Guy wrestle a mountain of canvas, and even the media showed up only to witness him accomplish the task in half the time he'd promised. There's a zoo in China that changes things up a bit. Well, it actually flips the whole concept on its head. It's a reverse zoo where it's not the animals behind bars, it's the visitors. It's part of the growing drive-through safari trend. Guests are placed in wire mesh cages mounted on flatbed trucks and driven straight through open enclosures filled with lions, tigers, and bears. And if you're game enough, you can even feed the predators through slots in the cage. Because nothing says don't eat me more than handing out slabs of raw meat to some of the scariest carnivores on Earth. Beneath the streets of Beijing, there's a hidden city home to nearly 1 million people living in crumbling Cold War era concrete bunkers. Originally constructed in the 70s as a defense against potential nuclear attacks, they've now been illegally converted into micro apartments, tiny windowless rooms home to students, migrants, and those unable to afford the soaring above ground rents. And yes, these conversions are technically outlawed. They don't adhere to fire codes, health standards, or housing regulations, but for some, it's where they call home. Have you ever noticed the air smelt different right after it rained? Well, you'd be right, and there's even a word for it. That after rain scent is called petrichor. When raindrops hit dry ground, they trap tiny air pockets that burst into airborne microbubbles and release a compound called geosmin into the air. The compound is produced by soil-dwelling bacteria, and it's what gives that earthy smell we associate with rain. And humans are incredibly sensitive to it. Why? Well, it's believed to be an old evolutionary skill that helped our ancestors follow the scent of rain to find fresh water. Sloths are pretty slow at everything, and digesting food is no exception. For humans, slow digestion is generally a good thing. It helps us stay fuller for longer and absorb nutrients efficiently. But for sloths, it can be deadly. Their food moves so slowly through their gut, it can sit there for up to a month, eventually fermenting and releasing harmful poisonous gases. And if their metabolism drops even further, say due to cold weather, digestion can get even slower. So for sloths, every meal is like a game of digestive roulette. From the not so appetizing Godzilla Ramen to muscle-bound bodybuilding animals, that's all there is for today. But there's more facts right around the corner. All you gotta do is click. I hope you enjoyed the video. Thanks for watching, and I'll catch you next time.